Hello, this is your host, Tyler Stanley, and welcome to Real Roots, the film podcast where we go back in time and discuss the movies that make movies. You've all heard of Singing in the Rain, right? It's a film that depicts the transition from silent film to the talkies as an incredibly difficult endeavor from an industry standpoint. In our second episode together, I want to take a look at one of the first real films that mastered this transition from silent to sound, or at least as well as you could for a 1930s war epic. This episode is about All Quiet on the Western Front. As alluded to in our last episode, today I am joined by Ian Geralds, the host of the Terrible Taste podcast. Say hi, Ian.
Hi, great to be on here.
And today we're going to be talking about the anti-war film, All Quiet on the Western Front. To clarify, this is the original movie from the 1930s, directed by Lewis Milestone, based on the book from 1928. All Quiet on the Western Front wasn't the first, big sound film. It wasn't even really, a new concept at the time. There had been, a bunch of sound pictures before it. Even with, Dreyer, we talked about in the last episode, he made a sound film way before this called Vampire, which I also touched on. But this was one of the first major anti-war film to incorporate, big sounds, explosions, gunfire, and a mix of dialogue and stuff like that. With that being said, there is a lot of, dubbed over sound effects. In fact, I think most of this film was basically, dubbed in post-production.
Yeah.
Everything was filmed with silent cameras.
One thing that I do want to make note of is, and this is a limitation of the equipment they had at the time, but every single time there is an explosion, the audio is peaked way high.
It's also just really odd because it's not proportional to other aspects of the movie.
Another thing that I noticed when I was watching it, some of these sound effects are really delayed because I remember I think it was Kat. He threw a grenade at this French guy, and then it showed that puff of smoke that they usually used, and then 3 seconds later was the explosion.
There were a lot of scenes with gunfire where you wouldn't see the bullets actually hitting people. You didn't see a lot of actual impact from a lot of the effects.
One piece of trivia that I find really interesting about this movie was how a majority of the cast were real World War I veterans. And I think it's a really cool piece of history that you have these people that went through such a horrible thing, and now they are kind of reliving what it was like in their day-to-day life, and they're sharing it with the world, saying, hey, this sucked.
Obviously, as a result of that, when you get a bunch of soldiers reenacting very realistic depictions of what they went through, these horrifying experiences, this was later banned by the Nazi Party pretty shortly after it was released, actually, in 1933.
And another thing, there are a lot of times, I forget the character's name, but he's kind of in the mess hall area, and he's just like, oh yeah, me and the Kaiser, yeah, we're real close. Hey, don't talk about me and the Kaiser like that. Don't talk about my buddy the Kaiser like that. And it's just kind of portraying him as a very human interaction when, with the Nazis, they were very, militaristic and very...
Militaristic, anti-human.
Yeah, very, nationalistic. And this movie portrays German soldiers like real people, and the Nazis very clearly did not want that to exist. In the same scene, I believe, a minute earlier, I think it's Paul's character. He's talking about, do the British hate us? Because I don't think the average British person has ever even seen a German before they came over. I've never even seen a British person until he came over. I don't know who started this war. And it's just this very human nature to it, and I find it very fascinating.
There's this scene at the end of the movie, not like right at the end, but pretty close to it when he goes home. And he's back with the professor who's trying to get them all to enlist. And the professor is like, give them some like motivation because you've been in the war. And he can't because he doesn't have any like good experiences.
One thing that I would like to mention is the very notable like flip, because at the beginning of the movie you have this very patriotic professor saying, I'm not going to be proud or anything if you guys all enlist because I convinced you to, but who can blame me if I'm a little proud? And then we cut to the class enlisting, and then by the end of the film, not even by the end of the film, by like the 30-minute mark in the film, the mood has switched from this patriotic just level of invincibility almost to a just low morale group of people who have been experiencing like true hell, honestly, for weeks, months, years even. And the professor and even the students to a certain extent are saying, oh yeah, this will be real short. We got this in a few weeks at tops. But the reality of the entire thing is it lasted for years and years and went much longer than the German people expected it to.
One decision I really like in this movie is how there is only music in like the very beginning when they're enlisting. And then the rest of the audio is it's a very different experience from like what I talked about in the last episode, which is Passion of the Joan of Arc, which is only music. And it's a ton of like these very like triumphant like sounds and like rhythms, and there's none of that here. Absolutely nothing.
In the beginning, kind of bringing my point back, the professor is drowned out by sounds of just horns and like I guess the sounds of patriotism, and then his voice slowly fades in to where he's giving this speech about, yes, we need you guys to enlist for the fatherland. And I think that scene's really powerful because I just like how good the symbolism is, honestly.
Despite how good this movie is at capturing the feel of wartime, there's a lot of repeat footage. And there's some sped up footage too that will like when like a camera's panning or something like that.
Yeah, it's not super jarring, which is kind of interesting, but the fact that they loop explosions, they loop like people going into trenches, coming out of trenches, it just really, really makes that 2.5 hour runtime very noticeable. To this movie's credit, I will admit, to me, it was very respectful, and it didn't have anything that was racist or demeaning. It was just it was a very human film, and I was honestly not expecting that out of a movie that came from the 1930s.
This episode of Real Roots is sponsored by Audible. I don't know if you're anything like me, but sometimes when I'm reading a book, I just find it really hard to follow along, or maybe I lose my train of thought. Audiobooks have always been my go-to because of this, but with Audible, it's a game changer. Whether you're in your car, working out, or just relaxing at home, Audible is always right there for you. With its wide variety of originals, it's impossible to run out of really great stories. Not to mention how easy it is to pick up right where you left off across a bunch of different devices. And the best part, Audible is offering a special deal just for you guys. By using code REALROOTS, you can get your first audiobook for free plus a 30-day free trial. Head over to audible.com/realroots. That's audible.com/realroots. Thank you to Audible for sponsoring today's episode. To do a bit of a comparison real quick, I wanted to compare a scene from the original movie in 1930 to the new one that released a couple years ago in 2022.
So Paul and this French soldier, they are in this crater, and in the original 1930, it is he stabs him, and the scene kind of goes on. Paul somewhat acknowledges the Frenchman that is slowly dying, but it's not given that much like thought and looking at. But in the 2022 version, it is so much more brutal because you can hear him choking on his blood. You see Paul shove handful after handful of mud and dirt into the French guy's mouth just to get him to stop. And in the original, Paul does have that moment of, I hate you. Wait, no. I'm sorry. Please don't die. Please don't die. But it is so much more effective in the modern version of this movie.
I think that the remake nails it technically and emotionally. But what I do really like in the original is how Paul, just after he dies, after the French soldier dies, I love how he pleads with him and how he's like, please forgive me.
Yeah, I think that would have added to that scene in the original, because he props the Frenchman up and he's just kind of sitting there, eyes open, just dead. And Paul prays to God, like, please let forgive me. And the 2022 version of the scene is superior in my opinion, but that specific portion is what makes the original scene so good.
All right, to wrap up this interview, I just wanted to say thank you, Ian, for coming on.
Yeah, no problem. It was my pleasure.
I really have enjoyed your show. I hope you do well in the future.
Yeah, I will see you in the next episode of my show, which is going to be airing at roughly the same time.
Yep. I'm excited to see what you have to put out.
Yeah. I'm excited to see this episode, man. I very much so enjoyed this.
I'm excited to see yours. I hope you make me look good.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you for listening to my second episode of Real Roots. Since our last episode together is coming up, I'm going to cheat a little and jump ahead to the digital era. Join me in episode 3, where I discuss Mad Max Fury Road, a film that changed the way we view apocalyptic color palettes. Make sure to rate or review us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm your host, Tylor Stanley, and this is Real Roots. Thank you for listening.